access reinstated.
Open sesame!
Commander Klingon vessel. We are energizing transporter beam. Now.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Star Trek from the Holodeck, the Discovery Edition. I am Michael Flores, your host, and David.
I was about to say, I don't think Tony would ever understand Star Trek.
Don't even know your name.
We blend in together.
Filipinos look alike, right?
No. Tony's my counterpart from the Mirror Universe.
Oh, he kind of is. He is the evil version of you.
He is actually. Holy crap! Yeah, you're right.
I would agree with that assessment. Fair enough. All right, so today we're going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery, Season 1, Episode 15, the season finale, David. The title, Will You Take My Hand, directed by Kiva Goldsman. The first season, Dave, has come and gone, forever remembered in television history. The first Star Trek series in over 10 years has finished its inaugural season. Klingons, Mirror Universe, Terran Empire, fungus, Tilly's hair, all of it.
That's the most important part. Tilly's hair.
All right. So the Federation won the war, and it would appear that Klingons will begin to unite the houses moving forward. The final episode of the season brought the heat in both suspense and sexuality. The Orion Syndicate.
There was more connections with the Syndicate than we thought.
Yes, thank you, Star Trek writers, for bringing the pulpy sex back at the last minute.
I know, just randomly.
Hey guys, you didn't think we were going to have an over sexed up scene? Fooled ya! Here it is. I mean, to this day, the Tasha Yar and Data in the first season where they made love, it destroyed me as a kid. I was like, that is weird, but I like it. Robot sex with a human.
I have many ways of doing this.
My penis can't compute.
Dude, that scene still is one of the most classic scenes in Next Generation.
Well, dude, Tasha Yar was hot as hell in that scene, too.
And Data was so awkward. He was
much like many of us virgins at that time in our life.
Exactly.
What do I do?
What do I do? I'm just going to lie here and she's going to do all the work.
Yeah,
this is a dream come true.
Yeah, I mean, can someone address Dr. Soon's, just disgustingness to begin with? Why would he create an android with a dick? Like a fully functional dick? Can we do an entire Star Trek show on that, please? I did enjoy that part, though. Georgiou getting after it. She's more hot-blooded than any dude on that ship. I'll give her that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the rest of those Starfleet individuals are all, stuffy with their shirts way too tight. At least Georgiou knows how to party.
Yeah, Terran Georgiou has actually turned into really a really interesting character.
Yeah, I can get behind that for sure. Now, getting back on track, Dave, the writers used the last 45 to 50 minutes or so wisely. They managed to wrap things up and give us an idea of what's coming up next. For example, the Enterprise, Pike. Which means possibly Spock? Little question mark there. I'm not saying I'm an advocate for Spock. We don't need to see Spock in Discovery. We don't even need to see the Enterprise per se. A little mention here and there like they've done throughout this season. So I like those. I don't think we needed to see the Enterprise. However, what a way to end the fucking season, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was excited because I was a little disappointed with the overall finale. It felt kind of like it fell flat.
It fell flat.
It
fell a little flat.
It fell flat, and then they flicked my dick really hard by showing me the Enterprise.
The Enterprise. And dude, the way they designed the Enterprise fit what Discovery's universe is like. Did you notice that? Like, the Enterprise is supposed to.
David, do I need to get you a cough button?
Apparently.
You are just Unprofessional today.
Days. Today is one of those days.
Listen, we can talk about dicks and titties, but no coughing, please.
No
it's
coughing.
very, very unprofessional.
But like the Enterprise, when they showed it, looked completely different than what we were what normally we think of the Enterprise. It looked more streamlined. It looked like it was supposed to match the Discovery show.
I have not had any time yet. However, let's do this. I want to do one show a month for Discovery just to kind of keep people, keep their appetites wanting more while we're waiting for the second season. Why don't we do a comparison? Let's blow up the still of the Enterprise and kind of compare the architecture and design to the different Enterprises that we've seen throughout the years. And when I mean Enterprises, I mean that specific one, NCC 1701.
Yep.
And see how much has changed throughout the years, even if we want to compare it to, say, the movies.
Because I'm looking at it.
I'm talking about the J.J. Abrams movies.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ship right now. The still that is out there, it's basically been plastered everywhere, and everyone under the sun is taking a look at it. It still looks like the Enterprise. However, there's a little different changes to it.
Is that a Star Trek nerd in you doing that? Like, oh, there's a slight. If you look at the lower part of the port nacelle,
I was about to say, yeah,
there is a little indentation that wasn't there in the original 1966 version. And also, if you look at even the Kelvin timeline before the actual split, it didn't really work. I don't like the way it looks. They messed up, and also there's way too many windows. You're such a nerd, Dave.
I was about to go there.
I know. Go ahead.
But yeah, I mean, like taking a look at if you take a look at the still that's out there right now about it, it looks completely different.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a cross between Next Generation and the original TV series.
Yeah. I'm okay with little differences like that. Again, Dave, what have I always said? When it comes to canon, I'm a little lenient because Star Trek has been going on for 15 years. The aesthetics and production design, the overall production design, it's hard to keep all of it consistent over 50 years.
Over 50 years, yeah.
But when it comes to story, I'm not lenient. I'm very strict about there's no reason to mess up canon by way of your writing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to things like that, it comes with the territory. As we've said before, Discovery isn't the only series that's kind of taken liberties with certain things. So let's move on, I should say, to a little bit of news, Dave. And this news, of course, is pertaining to the reemergence of the Enterprise, because that last scene has taken over the internet in a big way. Variety has actually ran an article this morning that says how the original Star Trek theme landed in the Discovery's finale. According to Jeff Russo, the composer, it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I would agree, because it felt right. When we saw the Enterprise, we needed to hear the classic Star Trek song, and then the way they just faded out, and then they pumped up the music, and then roll credits. I felt all of it worked really well to really drive home the point.
Yeah.
Now, the season finale cliffhanger of Star Trek Discovery, would you call that a season finale, like cliffhanger?
I don't consider it a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
because as we both said, the
story was wrapped.
The
story was wrapped up. If the story for season 1 was not wrapped, then I'd say it's a cliffhanger. That was just kind of a.
You could say it was a nerd cliffhanger, because now everyone's like anticipating next season. Oh, we're going to see the Enterprise now.
Yeah. So, season finale cliffhanger Star Trek Discovery, which aired Sunday, contained a startling revelation, the first sight of the USS Enterprise, and a reference to Captain Pike. That isn't the first reference, though. We did have one way back, I believe, in episode 4 or 5 as well. The immediate predecessor of the more famous Captain James T. Kirk of the original series. What's more, it was accompanied by the right music. Alexander Courage's original Star Trek fanfare, followed by a stunning new recording of Courage's theme for the 1966 through 1969 series, whetting audience appetites for more of the Enterprise in season 2 of Discovery. The composer says it just seemed like the right thing to do, says the composer, of invoking the famous 8-note Trek fanfare, which he also excerpts in his own Discovery series theme. It is the Enterprise, so I must play the Enterprise's theme. But that was also my problem with the Discovery theme. Do you remember I said that? I said, is it appropriate? Even though I love the Discovery theme, I posed the question. I was playing devil's advocate. Is it okay to play the classic Enterprise theme within the Discovery theme? And you said it was okay.
Yes.
Do you still stand by that?
I still stand by that.
Okay.
I still stand by that. I love the Discovery theme because it was very different, but you need that nod just to tell people this is a Star Trek film, or this is a Star Trek show,
right?
Or this is something.
Well,
of Star Trek.
Voyager and Deep Space Nine didn't need to do that. Mm-hmm.
Well, because by that time, Deep Space Nine and Voyager could stand on their own. They weren't sure if Discovery could stand on its own. So, because it's been so long.
Right.
So that's why I figured they could take the liberty like this by actually saying, okay, we're going to make sure to show people that this is still Star Trek. And also it kind of fits, kind of going with it helps transition with the timeline just to help the fans know, where does this belong?
Yeah. So
Discovery belongs here, but we're going to be getting into Star Trek Enterprise, and that's the Enterprise's theme, but that Discovery came first chronologically.
Okay, well, moving on to this next article that we have here pertaining to the Enterprise's appearance at the end of the finale. According to comicbook.com, Star Trek Discovery's creator explains the Enterprise's role in season 2, and this will help a little bit with speculation that we're going to do towards the end of today's show as well, Dave. But last night's season finale episode of Star Trek Discovery, Will You Take My Hand, featured the unexpected arrival of the Enterprise NCC 1701 with a sleek new look. Yeah, the port nacelle was slightly different.
See, it's Star Trek fans, dude.
Listen, I'm a Star Trek fan, the biggest there is probably, but I just don't nitpick stuff like that. I nitpick writing.
But Star Trek fans are infamous for it. So, only Star Trek fans are infamous for pulling out the schematics of a ship.
Oh, here's my blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. They'll pull out a blueprint out of nowhere and say, "This is the blueprint of the Klingon starship."
Oh, all right. So Star Trek Discovery co-creator and executive producer Alex Kurtzman spoke to Variety to clarify the Enterprise's role in the coming season. He made it clear that even with the Enterprise's presence, this is still a show about the Discovery and its crew. And that's what it needs to maintain. They need to maintain that throughout the writing process for season 2. They need to put all the focus on the Discovery crew because the show is Star Trek Discovery. Obviously, because the way they ended season 2, the Enterprise is going to have some bigger part of the overall story, but I don't want the writers getting lost in nostalgia. And so far, I don't think they've done that. I think they've done a good job steering away from nostalgia, because nostalgia is fun and great, but nostalgia also makes huge pitfalls for writing.
Yes.
And you don't want to do that. You don't want to been there. You don't want to have that idea of been there, done that. And unfortunately, in this day and age of member berries, that's what we get a lot in a lot of things, is those nostalgia moments that kind of ruin and scar your writing. And we just don't want that. If they do bring the Enterprise in, like they may do, then it needs to be something very different. And it needs to be solely as a supportive measure for the Discovery crew and their story.
Now, here's the thing, though. The one thing that I was thinking about after I saw this was, like, ever since they started Discovery, the whole game plan originally, I don't know if that's changed now with Fuller gone, but, like, the original game plan was the one season was going to focus on a different ship. Every season that they do of Discovery was
but that
supposed
changed.
to. Did it, though?
Yes, that's why Fuller left, because if CBS were to allow their relationship with Fuller to go awry this badly to where he quits the series and then they suddenly decide to use his ideas, that's fucking bullshit. And I think that's room for a lawsuit as well. I mean, Brian Fuller and Star Trek parted ways because Fuller was adamant with one and done seasons. He wanted anthology seasons.
Yeah.
One season's about this ship. One season might be about a spaceport. One season may be about a planet dealing with the Federation. Everything obviously is going to deal with Starfleet and the Federation, but that's what he wanted to do moving forward. So I don't see them changing that now and focusing on the Enterprise crew.
That's what I was thinking. And honestly,
I don't want it. Now that we've gotten this Discovery and we've kind of made our peace with it, that this is our new series, I feel like it would be silly for them to go back and do an anthology at this
It'd be
point.
a shame, because especially since there's so much they could do with that ship.
Well, I'm not saying they can't. Even the creator here, he says, let's see, where does he goes on to say that, hold on, where did this story go, David? He says the show is called Discovery, it's not Enterprise. So yes, the Enterprise will play a part of season 2, but it will absolutely not overshadow Discovery. And he says, I think with the Enterprise's arrival at the finale, we recognize that the audience has a lot of questions. A lot of questions pertaining to the original series, which really means with canon. The promise of the Enterprise holds the answers to a lot of those questions, including Spock's relationship with his half-sister, who's never mentioned, which does not necessarily mean you're going to see Spock, just that we owe an answer to that question. So it seems, based on these words from Kurtzman, that the Enterprise will be there more or less to aid with canon and to kind of settle some of the waters, because I know people have questions as to where the Enterprise is at. Why didn't the Enterprise pop up more often? Where's Pike? Where's Spock? Honestly, the galaxy is huge.
The galaxy's huge.
I personally, as a Star Trek fan, don't need to know these things. You've mentioned it. They had that nice, clever way of putting that Easter egg in with when Saru was looking for insight into the best captains of Starfleet.
Yeah.
And you had Georgiou, you had Pike, and you had the other one that was before Christopher. April. Captain April. You had those little Easter eggs there that helped fans who would have those questions, the fans who are in the know. It helped them kind of come to terms with, okay, so they exist, they're here. But I don't think we need to overstate, hey, by the way, here's the Enterprise, let's fly it in, guys. Here's Pike and here's Spock, and this is how everything works. Unfortunately, I get that's how a lot of fans are. So I get why they're doing it, but I hope they don't rely on that too much
and take away from the story.
Yeah, I don't want distraction. Don't worry about the fans. Tell a good story.
Tell a good story,
and the fans are going to be happy.
Especially since the story of Burnham so far has been really, really good. I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't too sure about this character, but the fact that they've introduced this character who isn't a captain, so she's definitely different from all the major characters of all the Star Trek series we've seen so far. She's not a captain, but they made her really interesting with the storyline that she's a being of two different worlds, and she's the one that basically Sarek chose. You could say Sarek chose over Spock. That started the whole rift between Sarek and Spock. That whole thing is really, really interesting, and I hope that they don't take away from it. That's what I was worried about with the season finale, was like going, okay, I know they're going to wrap things up, but there's so much left to tell about where is Burnham, or where is she going to go?
I agree but disagree. I don't think you need to overanalyze every aspect of a story. I feel like Burnham's story was fully explored. Not saying there isn't more to explore, but I think based on what we were introduced to at the beginning and how they ended it, I feel like that chapter in her life is concluded.
Yeah.
Moving forward, yes, I think there will be questions, and the idea of bringing Spock in, or the questions of Spock, I think those are questions that should be answered eventually, but I also don't want to feel like it's contrived, like the writers are justifying.
Yeah.
When writers start justifying their work, that gets into a very shitty area of writing.
Exactly. And that's why I said is like, I'm trying to think about next season, where are they going to take Burnham then? Where can you go? Because just like what you said, her story was concluded.
Straight to Ash's bedroom. Oh!
Well, we can't. Not now, because remember, Ash went off with L'Rell for some strange reason.
No, not a strange reason. He was into that freaky sex. He's all, sorry, Burnham. All right, we need to go to a very quick break, and when we get back, we're going to jump into the rest of our discussion and break down the entire season finale. We'll be right back.
songs of war.
Everything!
The Rain Man Show. The Rain Man Show.
Have you ever made your junk? And I don't want someone judging me like that way. For all I know,
You
other
don't want
people
someone
are
doing what you
thinking
just
that way.
did.
Yeah. Oh man, I can see this guy's penis, or I can't see his penis from my peripheral vision.
You think way too much about that.
I'm a thinker. I'm a thinker.
So you're like saying, don't judge me, let me look at your penis.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, Einstein thought about the stars and how to solve problems and scientific equations.
Thought about a dude's dick and it trunks out.
Right.
You're the Einstein of dicks.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of geometry, right, to peripheral vision of seeing the cock. There has to be.
Oh no,
I challenge you.
I imagine you with this like Sherlock mind palace, imagining the shape of it, and there's like numbers going around for circumference and length.
He probably he clearly noticed you looking at his dick, right? So he
No,
probably
because
just
I
made
would
a
know.
shield.
No, a shield. Is that what you
Shield
do?
with a little dick house with
Yeah.
your hand.
A little dick
So
house
people can't
with
see
your
you.
hand.
For more Rain Man, visit RainManShow.com. Open sesame.
Crossing over to other past things in Star Trek.
Yeah.
What if the Kelvin timeline passed through the original Star Trek, like the mirror universe,
Right.
or the mirror universe crosses over into the Kelvin timeline?
I mean, another possibility, Dave, is for reasons like this, more stories that can be told. I think Star Trek, with all of the TV shows that already messed up its own continuity, stuff that is canon was just forgotten.
Yes.
Like the Klingon head, star dates was a huge thing that they just changed whenever they wanted. From movies to the original series to Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, they weren't even consistent. So there's a lot of issues that was created over the past 50 years of Star Trek, and much like Star Wars had to do. Yes, I said the horrible word to all you Star Trek fans, but even what Star Wars did, in retrospect, it was a good thing what they did. Star Trek from the Holodeck, exclusively on Rain Man Digital. Go to RainManDigitalMedia.com or Patreon.com/RainManDigital.
End simulation.
All right, so you can now get more Star Trek from the Holodeck discussions each and every month delivered to your ear holes. Head over to Patreon.com/RainManDigital and pledge $5 or more a month to gain access to our additional Star Trek discussions. Don't let the Discovery off-season put you into Star Trek blues. Listen to us talk about additional Star Trek iterations.
Let us be your conworms.
Yes, thank you.
Have you ever wanted something so bad that you do just about anything for it? Well, that's exactly how we feel about you. That's right. AdamandEve.com wants you so bad. We're giving you 10 free gifts with your first order. You heard me right. That's 10 free gifts to spice up your love life. First, you'll get a sexy surprise for her. Second, an adventurous toy for him. And third, a little something we know you'll both enjoy. Plus, you'll get 6 full-length adult movies on DVD. And number 10, free shipping on your entire order. That's 10 free gifts for you shy types who've never tried Adam and Eve before. Just go to AdamandEve.com and select any one item. It could be an adventurous new toy, a sexy piece of lingerie, or anything you desire. Just enter offer code DEAL30 at checkout, and you'll get all 10 free gifts, including free shipping. That's offer code DEAL30. That's DEAL30 at AdamandEve.com.
In the center of a dead planet. Buried alive. Buried alive.
That's how you feel when you cough in the microphone. All right, so it's time to get into this episode here. Season finale of Star Trek Discovery, Season 1, Episode 15. Will You Take My Hand? Directed by Kiva Goldsmith. Let this music set in just a bit. All right, that's enough of that nonsense. nonsense. All right. So the first season of Star Trek Discovery is officially over. It seemed to go really fast. I hope the show gets an episode order bump next year.
I think that was because of the format, because of the streaming service. I mean, do you ever notice that, like, for streaming shows, they seem to go really quickly?
I don't know. I know that the new trend is to have a lot shorter orders. I mean, back in the day, you'd have 27 to 34 episodes.
4 episodes, yeah.
80s, 90s, early 2000s. And with the advent of streaming services and also higher production value shows like HBO and Cinemax are churning out, and Starz and Showtime, you're getting a lot shorter episode runs.
Like you're getting like 10, 12,
yeah, that
even
seems
down to 6.
Yeah, that seems about the average. In fact, BBC, that's what they do. They do about 6. Sometimes they do 3.
Yeah, that's true.
3 episodes. So it is a trend that is changing the landscape of television distribution and how episodes are released. I'm not against it. It just depends on the show. If the show can tell a full story for the first 2 or 3 seasons and it's done correctly with 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 episodes, then so be it. If the story feels complete, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think that's what we've always been saying up to this point when it comes to any of the TV series that me and you have reviewed, is kind of like, as long as the story is cohesive and they follow a really interesting path and keep us engaged, I don't think the length can hurt you. But
right.
the
girth might hurt you, though, just a bit.
Just a bit.
Like that childish joke. So, getting back to the episode count, Dave, I feel like the show could benefit from more episodes, in my opinion. Discovery, with a show that is as serialized as this one, which is my preferred format, it does leave some wanting more Trek-esque episodes, and that's why I say this show could benefit from bumping its episode order a bit more. I know,
like standalone episodes you're talking about,
right? And if you look at the history of Star Trek television, how it's released, typically they do have a first season that's shorter episodes. Deep Space Nine, I believe, had 19. I think Voyager had 16. Actually, no, I think Voyager had 15. It just depends on when they were released. If they were released in the second half of the TV season, spring, chances are they had a lower episode count, opposed to if they were released in the fall, around September, August, October months. That being said, Dave, I feel like, personally, I don't feel like it's needed per se, but it could help bring in some stragglers who've been on the fence with Star Trek Discovery. Imagine being able to tell your story in 15 episodes, right? A very serialized story.
Yes.
But what if you bumped up your episode count to, say, 20? Now you break up the myth arc episodes with some standalone moments that aren't, and when I say standalone, I don't mean they're completely standalone, but something that maybe focuses on something a little different than the main myth arc. You have an episode that may be Saru-centric and dealing with the Kelpians a bit, kind of like what we saw with the planet, with the trees and the life forms that communicated. Then I forgot what the name of the episode was. I think it was episode 4, episode 5.
It's interesting. Is that
the episode? Yeah,
that is the episode. It's interesting that you bring this up, because I actually had this similar conversation with my girlfriend, who I've gotten her to start watching the original Star Trek with me. And I'm like she started noticing that we've been watching Discovery and everything, and basically she started noticing that a lot of times in Star Trek, there's episodes that just stand alone. You don't have to read any more into it. But nowadays, with other series that are out there, it's kind of like, okay, I need to watch episode 1 through episode 8 or 12,
right, just
to get the full story.
And you know what? And I'm fine with that, because that's the nature of television. We've, since 2004, 2005, it's been a slow process. It's been a slow evolutionary process in television where more and more TV shows are adapting the serialized format of storytelling. And I feel like it does a lot more for grabbing those returning audiences. Like when you have someone watch an episode, they're drawn into the entire season because they need to know what comes next. That's the benefit of serialized television. If you're dealing with the one-offs, you can miss 2 or 3 episodes. You're like, oh, well, I'll just tune in a couple months. It's okay that I went on vacation. I don't need to catch up. So I understand the desire for television shows to move to serialized storytelling. Not only is it just better for business, but it's also, in my opinion, better for telling more intimate stories. All I'm saying is that I feel like Star Trek Discovery could, because of the nature of Star Trek. If it was any other TV show, I would say forget the one-offs. But look at what they're doing with X-Files. X-Files this year has returned again with an episode order bump. They went from 6 to 10 episodes for the returned seasons.
Yes.
And they're not focusing just on Myth Arc. They're focusing on the standalone episodes as well. The Myth Arc is the beginning and the end. It keeps everything consistent. Your book ending. But then in between, you're having your standalones. And I feel like Star Trek Discovery can do a similar thing. If you had 15 episodes and you bumped it up to 20 and gave us 5 episodes that were more standalone eccentric, I feel like you would pacify some of those fans who may point to Discovery and say, oh, this doesn't feel like Star Trek. This isn't Star Trek, yada, yada, yada. I think it might help calm those waters. And this is where writing for your audience can work to the benefit of a show. I know I said before our break, I said you can't write based on what fans want. You have to just write your show. This is something that they can take, not as a grain of salt, but as a way to kind of focus their story a bit and maybe space out a bit of the narrative as well, where some of us may have had issues where some of from episode to episode, you're like, wow, that's really fast. They managed to change. The emotions changed really fast. Stamets is sad at one point, then he's okay at the next. Burnham is devastated and not on the next. And again, that's television. I think a lot of us kind of swallow that and we take it for what it is. However, if you can potentially fix some of those issues, why not do it with some standalone episodes, right?
No, you bring up a really valid point, because it's kind of like it helps transition your audience and basically make your audience kind of take a step back. And I always use the term giving the audience a time to breathe.
Right. And
this whole season, it almost felt like there were times when you didn't have a chance to breathe. It's like, okay, next time, what's going to happen next time? What's going to happen next time?
Right. And I agree.
And you're like in that run.
Yeah, I agree, because even in the same episode, there would be resolve, and then within the last couple seconds, like the season finale, something new just got shoved up our rectum. Like,
there's no lube there.
Yeah.
There's no lube there.
So I totally get what you're saying. Again, it isn't a deal breaker for me, but I get where they can kind of smooth a few things out here and there for next season. I definitely feel like there is a writing argument to be made there. I mean, we will see, other Star Trek shows have increased their episode order from the first season to the next. So,
and I guess also to clarify your point too, is kind of like, it is just like when you said, you're not writing for the fans, you're writing for your audience. There is a difference, because if you're writing for your audience, you're keeping track of what your story is doing to that audience. You write for the fans, you're just writing for nostalgic's sake.
Right.
And, throwing a tribble everywhere that you can find. And it just doesn't make sense. But if you write for the audience so that your audience is comfortable enough, they'll fall in line. If you write for your fans, it's just going to be a jumbled mess.
Right. I agree. A little bit, for the most part. All right, Dave. So they made the decision we knew would happen. Starfleet and the Federation would come to their senses at the last moment. They put their faith, however, inside the hands of what would seem to be the only Klingon left with any honor.
Yes.
L'Rell, one of T'Kuvma's loyal followers, was the one to end the war at the last moment. The Klingons, to me, Dave, were so interesting at the beginning that we went on about it during our first episode's discussion, if you remember.
Yes.
The idea of a radical faction seems to be the best route to go. Due to the fact that we already know so much about the Klingons, yes, we've never had a movie or a TV show that really focused on the mythology of the Klingon religion or really delved into Klingons' way of life day in, day out. Deep Space Nine had a lot, but it wasn't quite like we seen in the opening 2 episodes of Discovery. We haven't delved deep into the spiritual or religious aspects before, but we understand for the most part what makes them Klingon, based on all of our Star Trek history. The premiere suggested a belief system with a splintered like culture, misfits of zealots. And I feel like that was a very strong way to introduce the Klingons in Discovery. The radicalized Klingons wanting purity and separation from inferior species seemed ripe for the picking.
Yeah.
It was such a unique approach to telling a story that included the Klingons. And by delving into a faction of Klingons, like we had originally thought they were going to be doing, it would take away from any potential canon missteps. Do you remember us discussing that?
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that the Klingons for me have been so important to this, and it's one of those things that I'm a little disappointed in the finale. That basically we just, for me, it was like almost like, okay, L'Rell's gonna fix it, don't worry. And I'm like going, wait, that's it? We've had this moment where basically, just like what you said, we got introduced to this new way of looking at the Klingons as kind of like a radical religious group that's bent on xenophobia.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting. And then basically throwing in the whole story about Tyler's battle with the fact that he's a dual personality. You have Vok in there, who is the stereotype of someone who's so xenophobic, but he has to share a body with someone that is alien.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of potential.
There was a lot
for
of
the
potential
Klingons.
there.
They ended up becoming kind of like a simple hurdle, though, to be thrown at Starfleet, something that would question their ideals. And honestly, I think my biggest problem with that is we've already been there. Questioning ideology is one thing, but how you do it is another. And I feel like the way they did it, I think how they were working towards it was original. And then at the last moment, it just turned into something very basic.
Yeah.
Will they be just as brutal in order to win the war? That was the question they posed. And I think most of us already knew they weren't. I feel like they should have.
Yeah.
We talked about, and I'm not saying that because of my theory that I wanted to happen, with the connection to the moon that was overmined and that would end up causing catastrophic ramifications for Kronos. Forget that theory for a moment. I feel like if they would have done that, if a faction of the Federation during their most desperate moment turned against their ideology and inevitably destroyed an entire culture, that would be something very dark. And I know there are probably a lot of Star Trek fans shaking their head at me saying, no, that's the worst thing. We don't want that. That's terrible. That's not what the Federation is. But this is the Federation at its knees.
At its lowest.
And I understand the feel-good decisions, but I'm more about the catastrophic decisions. That's what makes great tragic stories. Those are the ingredients of literature, of Shakespearean literature. To have a portion, not all of Federation, but a portion of Federation involved in the potential ramifications of an annihilation of a culture, I think if they went about it slightly different, I think they could have gotten away with it.
I believe so too.
And I think it would have meant a lot more in the finale if something like that would have happened.
Yeah, because conflict builds better stories.
Yeah.
Storytelling, you need conflict. You just can't have person A going to person A going to point B without any interruptions. Because then what's the point?
And I get the purpose for Burnham. It's about Burnham, and I feel like her being the one that goes up against it and defies the orders of the Federation, I think is in sync with everything we know of Burnham, but it also shows how much she's grown over the past 15 episodes.
And I think that's what really saved it was the fact that the storytelling of Burnham at this point was the one thing that made me happy.
Consistent.
That was consistent.
I agree 100%. And I get the questions that were posed, and it works for Star Trek. However, I feel like there was an overall missed opportunity with the Klingons. Getting back on track here. In the finale as a whole, the Klingons were faceless, a whole race waiting for L'Rell to unite them by threatening to suicide bomb the homeworld. I mean, that's how L'Rell got power over the Klingons, by doing exactly what the Federation didn't want to do. She then decides to unite the Klingons by threatening to blow up their homeworld. How is that honorable?
How is that honorable?
L'Rell was painted to be the last honorable Klingon, right? That was the whole point.
Yeah.
That she's the one. She's the last remaining zealot of D'Kuvma's movement. And she just threw in with the rest of the individuals and decided that she's going to hold her planet hostage. It felt weird. It didn't feel right. I don't know. Maybe it was just too simple. It felt to me, because again, being a writer myself, I've made terrible decisions, and sometimes you make decisions and you go back and rewrite it, because when you go back and do your read through of your first draft, you're like, really? That's how I ended the show? That's how I ended my story? And when I go back and look at it in retrospect, I realize that the reason why I did that was because I wasn't sure how to end it. I wasn't sure how to end it, so I made a rather simple decision that didn't feel right in the end. And when you look at what L'Rell did, I feel like that was a simple way to end the Klingon War during the 15th episode of the season finale.
Yeah, and also on top of that, the one thing that was kind of on my mind about the whole thing is, why L'Rell? Because at this point, the whole Klingon story was supposed to be centered around Vok. And it turned to Tyler and Vok. And suddenly L'Rell is the one that basically is the
it's because she's a woman.
She's the one that's supposed to be I guess you could say the hero of this story. But I was like going, we've been sold this bill of goods that basically the story was supposed to be centered around Vok. And at the end, what does Vok do? Vok doesn't really do much besides actually telling Cornwall about the intel on the planet. But that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I suppose what they do with L'Rell and Ash Tyler moving forward will probably determine how this all plays out. I mean, to be honest, that's an interesting duo, and the possibilities are endless. The fact that they had Tyler, and I didn't see that coming, that Tyler chose to go with the Klingons over the Federation, and to be with L'Rell, not be with L'Rell, but you know he's going to be with L'Rell. But that's not that they set up. But the fact that he chose to go with L'Rell to help rebuild, essentially, that's the idea I got, that they went to go rebuild the Klingon Empire and unite them. And the reason why I feel like that's the most interesting is, because Ash Tyler's Ash Tyler with Vok's memory. Yes. And I like that aspect. And you mentioned that last week during our discussion, that there is so much you can do with that. The philosophical aspect alone, it can fill hundreds of pages of writing just for Tyler's character and the would-bes and should-bes that could happen in season 2. And moving forward, if they stick to the idea that this Ash is the reason why the Klingons look different in just under 10 years, I understand that the Star Trek Enterprise had also had their own fix of the flu, of the Klingon appearance based on some type of flu and augment virus. But we've also been told by the Discovery writers that the Klingon appearance will also be explained.
Yes.
And we did not get that.
Not in this season.
So I'm assuming that they are still working. That's on the back burner for now. And I'm okay with that. There has been a lot to kind of chew in the first season. So let us digest, let us move into season 2. And if they they have plenty of time to tackle that.
They have plenty of time to tackle it. It is really interesting. I really would like them to actually see a more focus on Tyler and see, all right.
It's not going to happen, Dave.
We need those answers, especially since, what if I just thought about it right now, what if the Tyler thing leads to a small movement inside of the Klingons where they start doing these physical augments on willing Klingons that want to look like humans. And that's why.
You want me to be really negative? You know why it's not going to happen, Dave? Because he's straight, not gay. He's not a woman. He's a man.
He likes to be choked.
The focus of Star Trek Discovery is on women, which is fine because I don't think we've had a series like that before where it's 100% focused on women. Look at all the figureheads. Georgiou, Burnham, Tilly, Laurel. The entire show is built upon the backs of female-driven characters. And that's okay with me because we've never had a series like that. However, don't start thinking they're going to do something with Ash because he doesn't fit into what they're trying to do with their show.
It'd be a shame if they did.
They're not, Dave.
That's being negative.
They're just not going to do it. Look what they did with Lorca, Dave.
They did a really good job, though, with Lorca.
They did, but look, where is he at now? Destroyed into millions of pieces. So stupid. I hate to burst your bubble, Dave, but we also got to be realistic. Star Trek Discovery isn't going to change their course. All right, so Lieutenant Burnham has had her redemption. If anything, this season can be called that. It started with Burnham's mutiny and ended with her accepting her mistakes, and that was the best moment. I think it's the most well thought out aspect of the entire show, and it should be, since it's the thread that keeps the entire show tight, right? That keeps everything connected. And it was Lieutenant Burnham's story, and it really was a story of redemption, and it's something that we don't see a lot in a Star Trek season. We've had movies about redemption. We've had story arcs about redemption within subsequent seasons. But an actual season dedicated to the redemption of a character where we witness a terrible mistake they make. Or, in my opinion, I don't really consider it a mistake. It's all about context, right? I'm with Lorca. Context is king.
Context is king.
She made a mutinous decision, which is a poor decision when you're working within Starfleet. But she made a decision based on the logic of it all. And I feel like that all played so well for the rest of the season. To see her go and grow and learn is one of the highlights from this season. The first half was much stronger in that regard, and the second half was a bit ambiguous due to the nature, I would say, and deception of Lorca and the Mirror Universe.
Yes.
But for her to be the one to choose peace over destruction shows a sense of resolve.
Yes.
A calming of oneself, the areas of the psyche that was at a constant battle, the Vulcan logic and the human passion, emotions found a way to work together. Because that was really the spear, the tip of the spear, Dave, I think, that really struck me with this story was the logic of a Vulcan mixed with the unbridled human passion and emotions.
Yeah, the being of two worlds.
Yeah, and I know we've had that with Spock, but Spock was already resolved to be Vulcan. I am Vulcan. He didn't really want to connect with his human side. He never really felt like he was human. At least that's my interpretation. He never struggled with the human emotion. It's something that we never really saw made manifest in the TVs or movies per se. I don't know about the side media, but I know the actual canon media, it's never been a focus.
No, it's never been a focus of it because we know Spock's resolve.
So to see an individual who was at conflict internally between logic and passion, imagine having those types of internal problems, Dave, and now put yourself in a situation like Burnham was in, something very serious. Two conflicting ideologies. I mean, how do you come to terms with them? And that's why it was so good. That's why I love the pilot and how they set it up, because it set a tone for things to come and things for us to expect and look forward to when it comes to Burnham and her growth throughout the season. Being of two worlds, as you said, it always paves the way for some great introspectives into human social behavior. And by definition, Dave, that's again what Star Trek is about. It's about philosophy and the human condition, social behavior, politics. So to see all those things come into play with Burnham, I feel like that was the strength of not only the season, but also the season finale as well.
And especially since with Star Trek, especially this whole season, it's not to actually say which side is right and which side is wrong, but it's always going to leave the audience questioning, what would you do? What would you do if you were put in that situation? And when they were telling Burnham's story, they did it perfectly to the point that we felt like Burnham. We related to her in a way that basically allowed the whole audience, us as a whole, to actually put us in Burnham's shoes and say, what would you do in that position as a person? Okay? Because like we all know what Spock would do, because Spock's are just like what you said. He's already a person who has made his mind up and said, no, I am a Vulcan. I live by logic. That's it. And Burnham at the very beginning was like that, but she also had that conflicting nature because she wasn't Vulcan.
Yeah.
She was a human being that basically was adopted by Sarek and put into a life of logic.
Yeah. And moving forward, Burnham's got to be the focus still. And
I hope so.
And that's how the show was sold, but that's how the first season was sold, with Brian Fuller being in charge. So hopefully moving forward, they're going to stay with that, because the most interesting part about Burnham was the damage, the complicated and broken character that she was. So what are they going to be doing moving forward?
Exactly.
What happens if she has some resolve now and she seems to be at peace with who she has become? Then I'm curious as to how the writers are going to figure it out for next year. What are they going to do to make Burnham that much more complicated and to draw in the audience immediately into this story about this character?
That's why I was alluding to originally in the very beginning, was like kind of like, where do you take Burnham from this point? Just like what you said, we closed off the chapter of her life here. Well, what is there that Burnham has to do? Is my first thought process was, okay, is she going to try to become captain? Because she's a lieutenant now.
Right. And I don't know, Dave. And I really don't know what they're going to do with her character, because the draw was her disaster. The fact that she was a disaster. She made a horrible decision. She mutinied against her captain, which has never been done in Star Trek. It created ripples amongst the fan base. People were upset. They were appalled. They were angry. That's what you call good writing. The writers purposely did something and turned what you know of Star Trek up on its head.
Yeah.
And then they spent a year this past season fixing it and making it make sense through the course of a story that turned into a redemption story of sorts. So it did work. But now that she has been remedied, her character, and she's kind of at peace with who she is, how do we make her interesting? Because the most interesting elements of Star Trek, and you and I were talking about this off air, Dave, are the rogue characters, the characters who are flawed and who have issues. And that's really the catch-22 with characters like this. Rogues will always steal the spotlight. So what are they going to do? Are they going to give her additional problems? Is she still going to struggle with the chain of command? Is the Vulcan logic still going to conflict with human emotion? I mean, it could. I'm not saying that in one season you can fix all of those problems when it comes to your character traits, but how will they make it matter? And that's kind of an issue that I see happen with a lot of Star Trek throughout the years. And it was the problem with Enterprise. The problem with rogues, we all like them and we want more of them. In many ways, these are the characters we're drawn to, even in literature, particularly the stories of Shakespeare. Look at Lorca.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most interesting characters. Look at Tara and Georgiou. They were the balance to Starfleet's boring ideology. That's why so many audiences are drawn to those type of characters, not just because they're rebels, but because they're not part of the collective thought. They're not part of group thinking.
And they're not
they are individuals.
Yes.
And that's what makes them so interesting. And that's why I was drawn to Burnham, because she wasn't part of the collective thought. She had her own ideas. Captain Kirk, yes, he was a Starfleet man, but he also had his own ideals and what he thought was right. And he was willing to break the rules if he felt like his own moral compass justified it. Same thing with Picard. Look at his demons. Look at when Picard became interesting when, Dave? When he was assimilated by the Borg.
Yes.
That's when Picard became an interesting character.
Yes.
After that moment, that's what defined Picard for the next
Borg.
10 years plus.
Yeah.
Was his run-in with the Borg.
And having his individuality taken away from him.
Yes. Look at Captain Kirk. When did he become, not to say Captain Kirk wasn't just a rogue all the time, and I loved what they did with him in the original series, but when his personality took true root was in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
You know, Spock died, his best friend. Then his son was murdered in the following movie. It all led to his hate for the Klingons. That's what really defined Kirk. He defied orders to save mankind and to enact his revenge. That is why we like rogues. They are not a part of the group thought process. They're individuals. And moving forward, it just makes me wonder, how are they going to do that with Burnham again? How are they going to make her that character that's still part of Starfleet, doesn't become a mutineer, but also makes her that non-stuffy character that's in love with the Federation's farts?
Now, here was the thing. I just thought about this, and they've covered this also in the book, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Was after I saw the finale, I kept thinking, where are they going to take Burnham with this? And the one storyline that I thought of that they could possibly do is doing a dual, because she's the child of two worlds, right? We have Spock. The Enterprise just showed up.
Right.
What if that's where we're going to take Burnham? Is going to be, we're going to continue her. She's the child of two worlds, and now she has to deal with the conflict with her brother, who is true Vulcan. And we already know that basically both ran parallel to each other thanks to Sarek.
Yes, that's an interesting aspect. And it was a great aspect in the prequel book.
In the prequel book, yeah.
But will they run... You have to be very careful, man. You have Spock, one of the most iconic characters in Star Trek.
Who's young, though, at this point.
I know. Do they really want to bring Spock in as a supporting cast member to Burnham? You're on dangerous ground there.
It's on dangerous ground, but I think it could be really interesting storytelling for Star Trek.
It could be interesting, but I don't want it.
No?
I don't want it. This is about Burnham, and if we bring Spock in, I'm going to want Spock.
Oh,
Everybody's going to want Spock. It's like what happened with Lorca this year, and he wasn't even Spock. He wasn't even iconic. You're like, Lorca's cool. Lorca's cool. Wait a second. Lorca's a bad guy this whole time, and really? And he's dead? It's the Romeo and Juliet syndrome. What's Romeo's best friend's name? Benvolio? Am I getting my
I think so.
My Romeo and Juliet correct? Like years ago, you studied this in literature school. The reason why Benvolio died was because he had to. The audience liked him and didn't give two shits about Romeo. Benvolio was the cool cousin. He was getting the chicks. He was the man. And then Romeo was just stuffy little guy that played by the rules. I love you. Will you love me? Give me a chance. They had to kill Benvolio because he was too popular. And that's the problem that you have with a lot of TV. You have your cast. That's great and interesting, but if you accidentally cast that one person who's going to overshadow everyone, you end up fucking up your story.
Oh, that's true.
And that's the issue that I have with Spock becoming a supporting cast. I don't mind if he's in 2 or 3 episodes. Look what they did with Sarek.
Yeah.
Sarek, I think he was used sparingly. What, 4 times throughout the entire season?
Probably, most likely 3, because I don't really count the time that she's met him at Mirror Universe.
Okay, so he was in 3 times or so. And then you have the Enterprise coming in now at the last minute. If they do something similar and kind of set the tone with Spock and keep him involved in the story, but he's kind of in the back burner, but not front and center, I think that's smart. I think if you run, dude, are you going to care about Spock or Burnham? Be honest.
No, you brought up a really good point. I mean, if I saw Spock on television, I'm gonna want to see more about Spock.
That was the fanboy in you.
That's the fanboy
writing the story for next season.
Yeah,
that's what I do as well, and I have to like smack myself and say what actually makes sense.
But in defense of that, though, you have to say if they were to actually carry on Burnham's story about the Child of Two Worlds, they have to touch on Spock.
Yes, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, because you are right. You're on the right track, Dave. I agree with you. I feel like if they continue to explore the Child of Two Worlds, what better way to parallel that with Spock, a child that we already know who was also part of Two Worlds? Why not see how it plays out? How each of their resolves are different. That's great. I can get behind that, but they have to be very careful with the focus and how much attention they actually give to Spock. So again, this begs the question, how will Burnham be handled moving into next season? And that to me is the biggest question mark more than anything.
It is
bigger than Christopher Pike and the Enterprise making an appearance at the end. That's the biggest question, because as a fan, yes, that was a great fan moment, seeing the Enterprise. I jizzed. I was excited. I giggled, I think, maybe. I think I giggled. But then the writer in me took a hold and said, all right, the show's about Discovery. We need to be very careful now.
You had to, the writer side of you had to actually put the fanboy down.
Yes, I had to make myself limp dick in order to understand and truly be able to dissect this episode. I had to let the fanboyism go.
And that's truly really hard, especially when you.
No, it's limp.
Especially, I'm with you. When I was watching the episode, and the episode was okay for a finale, but when you got to that ending and you saw the Enterprise just shoot right in, and then you hear Captain Pike over the radio, it's like, holy crap, this just got awesome.
Yeah.
But
well, Dave, think about it. Let me shoot an idea at you, okay? Now, Georgiou could be that balance as well. And what I mean by the balance, I mean you have the ideology of Starfleet, right? And without Burnham backtracking on her progress, how do you create conflict? And how do you give us that rogue characters that we like in Star Trek so much? And this is where Terran Georgiou can come into play. We already know that she got away at the end.
Yes.
She was allowed to roam the galaxy, which I think is fucking dangerous. I don't know what Starfleet was thinking.
I was like trying to figure out what the hell were they thinking?
A woman that can literally, that knows the mysteries of conquering the galaxy. And they're just like, yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Have a nice day.
But I like that they did it because of what it could mean for next season. She has to come back, right, Dave? She has to.
Oh, she has to. I mean, at this point, I almost think that Georgiou is going to turn into Burnham's Khan.
If they, whoa, really?
I think it's going to be kind of like that relationship.
You think it's going to be,
and Kirk had that relationship,
but you don't think it's going to be a good relationship? You think it's going to be kind of like antagonistic?
I think it's going to be antagonistic because you got to remember, Georgiou wanted Burnham to join her. And Burnham turned it down.
Yeah.
Georgiou's character at this point doesn't like to be turned down on anything.
Yeah, she doesn't. Yeah.
Ask those 3 Orion people.
I would join her. Shit. Paint me green and slap my dick. I don't give. Isn't that what she did?
Paint me green and slap my dick.
Honestly, though, Georgiou is pretty fucking hot. No, that's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say, Dave, you always distract me, David, with your sexual jokes all the time. I feel like I totally get what you're saying, and I think that could work as well, like the Khan scenario.
Yeah.
But also, what if she isn't the bad guy? What if she is a character that's in the gray area, kind of like she was this week? What if she is that rogue, what if she's the yin to Burnham's yang? What if she is the true secondary cast member for second season, and they play off on each other for whatever reason? They have to, I don't want to say team up, that sounds like it's Justice League, but they have to work together.
That could work as well.
I mean, I think it would be an amazing way to tell a complicated story that involves a very intimate moment for Burnham dealing with this woman who, for all intents and purposes, is Georgiou.
Just different ideology.
It would be interesting to see how the Echoes of Fate play out. They keep bringing up that Echoes of Fate for the last 2 or 3 seasons, or last 2 or 3 episodes. And if they were to bring that into play and kind of steer Georgiou into some type of some type of mentor level, because we had it last year. We had Georgiou. We started the very opening season with this discussion, Dave. The trifecta of brilliance: Saru, Sarek, and Georgiou. Why does that have to change? Why should that change?
Yeah, the trifecta of brilliance doesn't have to change.
If that format worked, which it did, then why not continue it, but just alter it a little bit where Georgiou is now the balance to Starfleet ideology? I think it might be pretty cool. There's room for a lot of story there.
I do too. I mean, it's the possibilities of where they could go in Discovery's second season is vast. We could come up with possibilities from starting right now till, weeks, months from now.
Yeah.
The thing is like, ultimately, we all are in agreement, though, that basically next season has to continue Burnham in some way.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say it is. I mean, the show is built around her, built on top of her, built under her. It's all about her.
Yeah.
So hopefully they focus it up a bit, because I think you and I both have the same complaints. It feels like the last 3 episodes or so kind of veered off in a direction that wasn't focused neatly like the opening half of the season was on Burnham. It felt like they were kind of going all over the place.
I would say the last 2, because remember the third episode, the last Mirror episode, honestly really felt like that should have been the finale.
Right.
The last Mirror episode should have been the finale by all respects and purposes of them getting back.
Yeah.
And that's why I was worried about these 2 episodes, because I'm like going, okay, what are you going to do for the 2 episodes that's supposed to, I guess, wrap up the entire series when you could have wrapped it up right there?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, man. And I think it was also smart to keep Georgiou's feelings a bit ambiguous at the end.
Yeah.
We're not quite sure where she stands, and I'm fine with that. I think that works for that type of character moving into second season. Now, Saru and the rest of the crew, who will be the captain? I was hoping that Saru would have been captain.
I really did hope that it would have been Saru, because it would have been cool.
And they reiterated that he was just acting captain, which I was a little not annoyed. I was kind of hoping that we'd have our first alien captain. I think it's a perfect scenario to have one. But that also leaves the question open as to who will be the captain. What type of casting are we going to see for second season captain for Discovery?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a male? Is it going to be a female, alien, black, white, heterosexual, cis male? What is it going to be, David?
I really hope that basically...
I hope it's a cis male Klingon.
It's cis male. I really hope that basically it's not as simple as, the second season's going to be about Burnham becoming captain.
I don't think she should be captain.
Because, I don't think she's ready to be captain.
When they first announced that Burnham would be the lieutenant, and that would be the first show that's not focused on just the captain. And didn't we both like that idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they should
idea.
stick to that. Don't change it up. We don't need her to be captain. Also, again, been there, done that. We already know what we've already seen 5-6 different captains. Let's focus on this for a bit before we move into the captain territory.
Here's an idea.
All right.
I'm going to shoot you an idea.
All right.
What if there's always been talk that Jason Isaacs isn't done yet. What if the Lorca from this reality does show up?
Hey guys, I'm back and I want to be captain. That's terrible.
Nah.
No, come on. Would you write that on the back of a matchbox? Come on, David.
I thought about it because I'm like, the fanboy in me for Jason Isaacs would be happy.
Well, don't get me wrong. Well, yes, as a fan of Jason Isaacs, I'd be on board. But then I have to stop and think. I'm like, yes, that's shitty. Let me throw that away.
But
because yes, I want Jason Isaacs to come back, but I don't think in the capacity of captain of the Discovery it would work. It'd feel very contrived.
It would.
Yeah.
It's so hard to... The only one that I could see as captain is Saru, because Saru has actually been, honestly, captain material for the last season.
He has. He's grown a lot. It's been a very subtle growth.
That monologue, dude, that captain's monologue, call it a captain's monologue if you want, but that monologue he gave at the end of the Mirror Universe segment, that's captain's material. And that's why I'm like going, right then, I'm like going, Saru's the captain. Screw this.
Yeah.
He deserves to be the captain.
I mean, look at how the season ended, okay? The season ended with, obviously, the way it's going to pick up with season 2. I don't think there's going to be a lot of room for time to pass. So what if Saru's the acting captain for the entire season? That would work, too.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's a lot of fans out there that would like to see Tilly actually get that, but that we
She's not ready.
She's not ready yet. In fact, by the end of the episode, we already know that she goes to Starfleet Academy.
Yeah. Yeah. Tilly just needs to be available so when I can talk to her. And also the shaved head redhead chick. Jesus. Where's she been my whole life? She's hot. All right, we need to end this week's discussion and our discussion on Star Trek Discovery Season 1. But Dave, before we close out today's show, give me your final thoughts on this episode in a nutshell, and then your overall thoughts on the season, and then we're done.
In a nutshell, the season finale felt really lukewarm, and I was very surprised in the direction they went. The ending was absolutely made me fangasm all over the place. No! Overall, it wasn't a bad episode, but definitely left a lot on the table that I thought they could actually cover. And I understand that basically maybe they just didn't have time. Maybe it'd be going too far. Just like what we've been alluding to, this whole show is kind of like the problem with Discovery is the possibilities where they could go are just so vast. You don't know which direction they're going to go. And for the episode, I would give it a C+.
Jeez, Dave, would you hate it?
No, I didn't hate it. I just
C+.
thought it's not
just
failing level.
It's because you're sexist, Dave.
It's because I don't know. I love that scene with Georgiou and the three Orions.
That's sexist. If you like that scene, that's sexist.
No, because she was in charge of those three.
Just because you like the way women look doesn't mean you're not sexist.
But the series as a whole, I absolutely think all Star Trek fans should actually pick up this series. If it comes out on Blu-ray as a collection, I am picking it up because it was absolutely fun covering this series.
All right, good. C+ for this episode, and what do you give the season?
Absolute A. Absolute A.
How's that average out, Dave? C+? Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Well, you got to remember that all the other episodes have been so strong.
Okay. All right, I can get behind that. Okay. All right. So my thoughts are pretty similar to you as usual. You and I seem to be on the same page throughout most of the year. This season has been a whirlwind of excitement. It's been great to see Star Trek back on the screen again in a big way, and with just beautiful imagery and poetic narratives that match the cinematography. Everything has just been perfect when it comes to launching this series again. However, I feel like the first season, the first quarter started off very strong, and then the show felt like it lost itself when they came back from break. And I don't quite know why that happened, but if you analyze the writing, it is looser. The narrative is not as tight. I don't know if they were trying to focus on those plots and those twists and reveals. I mean, but my own thoughts to the writers now, like, let's do away with, like, listen, I love plots, twists, okay? I love those M. Night moments, right? I think we all do. But let's not gear our entire show to mystery and intrigue. Just tell a good serialized story, and people are going to be enthralled with your story. You don't need to have edge of your seat plot twist. I know that's the new thing. Westworld seemed to have started the whole fan theory craze, and now every TV show now wants to have those plot twists. But sometimes when you work on those plot twists, you focus more time on distraction and, hey, don't figure out what we're doing, rather than focusing on a tight story.
Yeah.
And the first half was about building that distraction, about building Burnham, and then the reveal in the second half. And then after that, the show just felt loose. It didn't feel as tight, like it was as focused. So I give the season a B, and I give this season finale a C+ as well, Dave. And because the season finale just felt a little flat. It was very simple ending.
Yes.
I mean, those writers are smart in the Star Trek room.
They played it smart. They played it easy.
Right. And that's why I'm griping about it. If this was the CW and a bunch of CW hack writers, then I'd be like, hey, minus Supernatural. Love the Supernatural writers. But I'm just saying. And then I'm like, hey, well, I didn't expect much from them anyways. I mean, Aaron Harberts and Gretchen Berg are just great writers. They're really good at what they do. And they kind of just ended it. It was just like, all right, Klingons, they lost the war. You're telling me that an entire armada of Klingon ships are flying towards Earth, and a nobody Klingon woman
is going to tell them what to do.
She's going to unite the Klingon house when Takuvma couldn't even unite them and sell them on the idea. But you have L'Rell, this lowly woman who's proven she has not proven herself really amongst the Klingons, and she's going to hold a bomb up and hold the Klingons captive until they allow her to rule. That felt like a very cheap way to end the entire war. That was kind of the backbone of the drama aspect of the first season. It felt weird. It felt very simplistic and kind of like, well, guys, how do we end this? Well, let's just have her hold a bomb up. Hostage scenario. Very cheap. And I'm a little disappointed. It's just kind of a weird way to end the season, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I feel like they knew it. That's why right when you're feeling bummed, you're like, well, that was kind of anticlimactic. Then that's when they have the Enterprise fly in at the last second, because you throw out your issues for fangasm moments where you're like, oh shit, Pike, Spock, the Enterprise, holy shit. Why else do you think we had that at the last moment?
Yeah.
To calm the waters, to calm people down for being upset about the anticlimactic ending, which it was.
Yeah.
So on that note, I want to thank everybody for listening to our discussions and breakdowns. I know we've garnered a lot of new listeners throughout the last 3 or 4 months. A lot of Star Trek fans have really been drawn to our show, and I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you, David.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next time.
And live long and prosper.
I couldn't help but notice your pain.
My pain?
It runs deep. Share it with me.
End simulation.